Hey guys, so today we got a video, I can't believe it took this long to make, ranking the Halloween franchise. We're going to go from worst to first, and alright, let's cut right into it. So, number 10 is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is the worst because it shouldn't be the worst, but it feels like a bad fan film. You know what I mean? Michael Myers doesn't seem like the real Michael Myers. We have an extraordinarily convoluted plot, we have an aloof Paul Rudd, and this just isn't a very good movie. I mean, it could have been a good movie, just not in the Halloween universe. You have a Celtic backstory about why Michael Myers kills because of sacrificial rituals that they kind of touched on in Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. But for the sake of this movie, it's a friggin' mess and it's just uninteresting. Again, it feels like a bad fan film from the 90s. It just does not feel organic, and it doesn't feel like it's in the Halloween canon at all. I think it's the most forgetful one of all the movies just because of how bland, how disjointed it is, and again, just how ineffective it is overall as a movie. Not to mention you have very sparing amounts of Donald Pleasence. I will say it's impressive they got him into this movie in the state he was in, but man, they leave him off on a terrible note. He died before the movie came out, and it's like, how do you end Donald Pleasence's life and his screen career? Oh, I don't know, you have the screen cut to black and you have him screaming? Like, blood-curdling screams. Oh. Number 9, Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Again, this one shouldn't be the worst in the entire franchise, but the problem is, it takes itself so seriously. Rob Zombie wanted to go in a different direction after his first Halloween movie. And here I think he thought, oh, well, let me put in my own kind of wild, crazy sensibilities into it and really make something cerebral. Not effective. Again, I've made a whole Diagnosis Cinema episode about this as the cinematologist, and there's really a lot of laughable qualities in this movie for one that takes itself so damn seriously. I mean, the cow scene? What?
You're like, cow! Cow!
Then you have a Weird Al scene talking about Michael Myers as if he's Mike Myers the comedian. Oh, good God. Why would you do that? Okay, so this movie just takes itself way too seriously. It's nonsensical, it's not moving, it's not scary, it's just ridiculous. And Rob Zombie, thank God, has stepped away from the series, and anyway, alright, let's move on. Number 8, Halloween Resurrection. This should be the worst movie in the entire franchise, but it's not. And it's amazing that you even have to say that. This one shouldn't have happened. It followed up what could have been a really great ending to the Halloween series, but of course, money, okay? So what they tried to do, they put the most contrived movie plot that they could into this, and I talked about this 7 years ago in my original Oktoberfest series, but the problem was, or really the saving grace was, that it was entertaining because of how bad it was. And it still is. I mean, you can sit through this movie and just see how bad it is and see how it tries to outdo how bad it is. And talk about contrived. This movie was really mailing it in. You put in Busta Rhymes, Tyra Banks in a movie about Halloween, like Michael Myers killing people being streamed on the internet. That's friggin' contrived. But the thing is, it doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. And that was definitely a bad thing at the time. But in retrospect, and definitely in reference to the previous 2 movies that I'd mentioned, at least this one isn't being so damn serious, whereas the other 2 were failing miserably trying to be serious. So this one, again, I wouldn't recommend watching it, but if you're a big fan of the series like me, it's going to be fun to see and just get in on how bad the movie is, because this is when they really dried out.
Let's see what you got.
Okay, so number 7, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Yeah, this is where the series really started to get bad. And I mean, it actually did get bad here. This is the first one that gave me those cringeworthy moments and like kind of pissed me off. Now this was picked up by a real oddball. They rushed this one into production after Halloween 4 and got this one out the next year. This real oddball French director came in and he had a lot of weird choices and bizarre choices to follow up the chronology of the fourth movie. I watched a documentary about this recently, and everybody just said this guy was really out there. I think he was like a 1989 version of Tommy Wiseau. But the problem was that they were following a really bad mold here. They were just mailing it in, trying to get a few bucks, and not really trying to build on the success that the fourth movie had brought. They threw away characters really quickly that worked out in the fourth movie, brought in terrible new characters, a bunch of awful gags. The Michael Myers mask is just ugly and it's terrible. You have Donald Pleasance, very aloof through the last third of the movie. I mean, the first 2/3 of the movie, he's great and he gives it his all. Donald Pleasance did great, but it's just everything leading up to that is so bizarre. You have characters like the Tina one, and in the documentary I had watched about it, they said in 1989 when this had come out, people were actually cheering when she gets killed. And I feel that way every time I watch this movie. But that's the thing. There is something mildly watchable about it. There's a couple things in it that they do well. I love the Salt Lake City shooting locations that they use. It just works. And it has this really appealing look to it. And that might be the saving grace of this movie that doesn't make it one of the worst. Well, it's on the worst half, but still it's the first bad one, and yeah. So it's where it goes on the downward slope. So number 6 would be Rob Zombie's Halloween. I was really excited for this one when it came out. I was in high school at the time and I was a little bit more naive, so I thought, hey, this could be a fun update. And man, did it disappoint me. I mean, it disappointed me a lot. At least I watched it online. I didn't pay for it with my own money. But the thing was, people have almost given this movie too much of a pass. I know the Nostalgia Critic recently let out a review about it, saying, oh yeah, Rob Zombie was trying to mimic the exploitation style of the 70s. Nope. No. Okay, listen. Rob Zombie thought he was calling back to the good parts of Halloween, which, I mean, the whole movie was great in the 70s, but he thought he was taking what was good from it and updating it, but he didn't keep any of that ominous, foreboding, evil nature that's looming over this town. No, what he did was make an extraordinarily bad and uninteresting backstory that demystified a character that was very scary because of how mystifying he was. And when you make him a redneck hillbilly chubby boy, it just didn't work. You got terrible dialogue, you have characters that aren't really easy to sympathize with, and then really you just copy a lot of moments from the original movie and don't add anything to it. Like when they kill Bob, he does it the same way. I mean, the walks to school are too similar. I don't know, it just didn't work. It was just very frustrating, especially when you put in this stupid Rob Zombie kind of appeal to it where everybody's a hillbilly, everybody is this trashy, foul-mouthed person. It just doesn't work. I mean, I have another Diagnosis Cinema episode about this as well, so if you want to see a more comedic kind of review of it, go watch that. But this is another one that really Rob Zombie, he whiffed hard on this. So, I mean, that's all you can say about that. Number 5, and again, this is where it kind of gets tough, but number 5, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This one almost didn't have any business being as enjoyable as it was. I know a lot of people say they don't like it because it's too similar to the first, but quick backstory, the writer Alan B. McElroy had like 9 days to write this because it was before a writer's strike. He did a pretty damn good job, okay, and it's probably the best script he's actually written in his career, and there's a lot of info you can watch from the documentary about the Thorn trilogy, and he has some great insight on that. But this one, it just seemed like they did it as a labor of love. Now, was it to cave into fan pressure after Halloween 3 didn't work out? Yeah. So you can criticize it for that. But come on, it's a fun movie. This is a fun movie, and that opening scene is one of the best opening scenes in any horror movie I've ever seen. It's just done with a lot of care, a lot of respect. It might not be as effective as the first couple original films, but Danielle Harris is a great actress, and she did a great job as a 10, 11-year-old girl. You had Dwight Little, who directed the movie. He did it with a lot of care, and the cinematography is nice and smooth. Salt Lake City is a beautiful filming location. I buy it as Haddonfield, Illinois, and they just did a fantastic job. And getting this franchise back on its legs after the fans didn't want anything new. And this is one I really enjoy going back to all the time. And Donald Pleasance came back as well, and he just does another fantastic job. I mean, there's a lot going good in this movie. And if you think it emulates the first film too much, I can understand that. But aside from that, it's a very enjoyable, very brooding, atmospheric movie. And you get right into it with that opening scene and with Alan Howarth's musical score. There's a lot of fun to be had with it, and I enjoy it quite a bit for that. So number 4, it was hard to pick between these two, but I'll say why. Number 4 is Halloween H2O, 20 years later. The reason I put this above Halloween 4 is this one especially had no business being this good. I mean, this was after Halloween 6, the worst movie in the entire franchise, came out, and they wanted to recalibrate things and bring it back home. And there's a really heartfelt story here. It's a well-written movie, though Kevin Williamson made it emulate Scream a little too much. That's the problem. Aside from all that, you have a very heartfelt, very engaging story about the psyche of Laurie Strode 20 years after these definitely traumatic events had happened. And it's just done so well, and it's done with a real respect. You know, a lot of people might not think about it, but you go back and you watch it, there is such a more heightened degree of watchability with this movie than some of the others. I mean, compare it to the latter half of the list that I had been talking about before. And this one has much more watchability to it. The acting is more thoughtful and more disciplined. You have an honest script, you have a good story, and you have some quality scares. This was a great retroactive kind of sequel to a movie franchise that had by then lost its way in 1998. And this is one that people cheered for in the theaters. People were loving this, and this is one that really got that enthusiasm back into the series. And it's just done, again, with some real respect, a real sense of story, discipline, and character that makes it all the more enjoyable, and just a potentially fantastic ending to the series. But Halloween Resurrection kind of got in the way of that. So this one's really good. Number 3, Halloween 2 from 1981. This was a great follow-up to the first movie. And though it technically really is more of the same, it did a lot of great things here. The musical score is John Carpenter and Alan Howarth's, I think, first collaboration, and there's a great atmospheric bend to this theme that I think is slightly different than the first, and it's very effective. There are a couple inefficiencies with this film that I think hold it back a little bit. They were caving in to audience pressure, so they made it a little bit more like a Friday the 13th style movie, but it doesn't hurt the film that badly. And then overall, the only other problem I would see is that it emulates too many things from the first. They almost copy the whole Tommy It's Me banging on the door scene. But aside from that, this one is a lot of fun, and it feels very authentic. It really does feel like we pick up right as the first movie ends. I think the brother-sister thing is done well here, even though it wasn't a great move for longevity purposes, and John Carpenter will completely cop to that. But aside from that, you get this real isolated feeling in a hospital, you get some great kills, you get Michael Myers still looming around, you get a great theme, Donald Pleasance does a great job, and it has quite the explosive ending. So while it definitely falls short of the first film, this one is a fantastic follow-up. It feels like a good continuation. There's a lot of memorable moments here, and some of the characters are pretty fun. So this one, a step down from the first, but enjoyable nonetheless. Number 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is an unpopular opinion, and even about 7 years ago I had a much different opinion about this movie. But the reason it's at number 2 is because 1, it's a fun, bizarre movie, and 2, because it's an original idea. This is when they were trying to anthologize the series, and this was an idea that, hey, you know what, it's about something at least. And Tommy Lee Wallace, I think, did a great job with it. John Carpenter and Alan Howarth's score is fantastic for this movie. It has some messages about consumerism, about television, and about all the things that were apparently intruding into kids' lives in the early 80s. And Tom Atkins is a blast as Dr. Chalice. This is just a fun movie and creepy on a lot of fronts. It tried to do something extraordinarily different than the formula that was coming to be in the early 80s with horror films, and you have to appreciate that in retrospect. It didn't do well with critics. I think it tanked in the box office a little bit, but this is one that when you go back, you can really appreciate the disciplines that were brought into this movie. Dean Cundey shoots it very well, and it looks great. The score is fantastic. The plot is interesting, and it has to do with those Celtic routes again. And it's just one that I'm glad people, especially like myself, had really warmed up to in recent years. So, just give it a chance. And number one, obviously, the original. Now, the original, what can you say about it that hasn't already been said, right? Take your pick. You know the reasons. So, on that note, I am going to leave it there. I want one more video to come out, maybe on a Halloween day, and if it comes out, you'll know why I'm leaving this up for interpretation on why Halloween is the best of the Halloween series. But thanks for watching, guys. Comment your lists below and exchange opinions, and hey, I'll get back to you if you got something to say. But thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like this video for more, and until next time, guys, I'll catch you later.